The rain hammered against the windows of Marcus's modest two-bedroom house in Riverside Heights, like nature itself was trying to break in. He glanced at the clock, 11:47 p.m., and pulled his worn flannel robe tighter around his shoulders. His 8-year-old daughter Emma had finally fallen asleep after the third round of thunder had sent her scrambling into his bed, clutching her stuffed elephant. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus had grown accustomed to these sleepless nights. Single parenthood had taught him to function on fragments of rest, stolen moments of quiet between Emma's school activities, his 2 jobs, and the constant worry about making ends meet. Storm outside matched the perpetual storm he felt brewing in his chest, the weight of responsibility that never seemed to lighten. He was about to check the weather app on his cracked phone screen when 3 sharp knocks cut through the howling wind. Marcus froze. Who would be out in weather like this? The local news had issued warnings about flash flooding and fallen power lines. Most sensible people were hunkered down, waiting for morning. The knocking came again, more urgent this time, followed by a woman's voice barely audible over the storm. "Please, is anyone there? I need help." Marcus's protective instincts kicked in immediately. Emma was sleeping, vulnerable, and he didn't know who was outside, but the desperation in that voice tugged at something deeper, a recognition of genuine fear that he couldn't ignore. He approached the front door cautiously, peering through the peephole. What he saw made his heart skip. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, stood on his porch completely soaked. Her dark hair was plastered to her face, and she was hunched over, one hand pressed protectively against what was obviously a very pregnant belly. She wore a simple blue dress that clung to her frame, and even through the distorted lens, Marcus could see she was shivering violently. He unlocked the door and opened it just wide enough to speak. "Are you okay? What happened?" The woman looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "My car broke down about a mile up the road. The engine just died, and my phone has no signal. I've been walking for 20 minutes trying to find help." Her voice shook, whether from cold or fear, Marcus couldn't tell. "I'm pregnant, and the contractions started about an hour ago. They're not regular yet, but I'm scared." Marcus didn't hesitate. "Come in, please, you're freezing." He stepped back and opened the door wider. The woman hesitated for just a moment, studying his face, then stepped inside. Water dripped from her clothes onto his worn welcome mat, creating a small puddle that reflected the overhead light. "Thank you," she breathed, wrapping her arms around herself. "I'm Sarah Williams." "Marcus Chen. Let me get you some towels and dry clothes." He gestured toward the living room. "Please, sit down. Are you hurt anywhere else?" Sarah shook her head, lowering herself carefully onto his second-hand couch. "Just cold and scared. The contractions aren't coming regularly, so I think I have time. But with this storm..." Marcus was already moving toward the linen closet. "I'll call 911. They'll know how to get an ambulance through this weather." "I already tried," Sarah called after him. "The operator said all emergency vehicles are dealing with flood rescues and downed power lines. They're backed up for hours." He returned with towels and one of his larger t-shirts. "The bathroom's right down the hall if you want to change. I'll make some hot tea and try calling again." While Sarah changed, Marcus busied himself in the kitchen, his mind racing. He'd dealt with plenty of emergencies as a single parent. Emma's broken arm last year, the time she had a high fever and couldn't keep anything down. But he'd never been responsible for someone else's crisis, especially one involving childbirth. His phone showed no bars. The storm had probably knocked out a cell tower. The landline was dead too. A tree branch must have taken down the phone lines. They were completely cut off. Sarah emerged from the bathroom looking slightly better but still pale. His oversized shirt hung loose on her frame, emphasizing how young and vulnerable she appeared. "Any luck?" she asked, settling back onto the couch. Marcus shook his head. "Nothing's getting through, but the storm can't last forever. We'll keep trying." He handed her a steaming mug of chamomile tea, and she wrapped her hands around it gratefully. "I can't believe you opened your door to a complete stranger. Not many people would do that these days." "My daughter's asleep upstairs," Marcus said. Simply. If something happened to me and she needed help, I'd hope someone would do the same for her. Sarah's eyes softened. "You're a good father. I can tell." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the storm rage outside. Marcus found himself studying Sarah's face in the lamplight. There was something about her that seemed incongruous with her current situation. Her speech was educated, refined even, and despite being caught in a thunderstorm, there was an underlying composure that suggested she wasn't accustomed to being helpless. "Where were you headed?" he asked. "In this weather, I mean." Sarah's grip tightened on her mug. "I was driving to my sister's house in Millbrook. She's been helping me prepare for the baby." She paused. "My family situation is complicated." Marcus nodded, recognizing the weight of unspoken stories. "I understand complicated." "The baby's father." Sarah started, then stopped. "Let's just say he's not in the picture anymore. My family has strong opinions about my choices. Are they supportive at least? About the baby?" Sarah's laugh held no humor. "That's the complicated part. They have very specific ideas about how my life should go. This wasn't part of their plan." Marcus felt a familiar pang. "Plans have a way of falling apart. I know something about that." "What happened with Emma's mother?" Sarah asked gently. "If you don't mind me asking." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He rarely talked about Rebecca, partly because the pain was still raw even 3 years later, and partly because Emma didn't need to hear the full story until she was older. "Cancer," he said finally. "Ovarian. She fought for 2 years, but Emma was only 5 when we lost her. I'm so sorry." Sarah's voice was filled with genuine compassion. "That must have been incredibly difficult. The hardest part was watching Emma try to understand why Mommy wasn't coming home. She kept asking when she would get better." Marcus stared into his own mug. "Rebecca made me promise to always tell Emma the truth, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. She sounds like she was wise. She was everything I wasn't: organized, patient, good at all the domestic stuff I'm still figuring out. She had our whole future mapped out." He gestured around the modest living room. "This wasn't exactly the plan either." Sarah nodded slowly. "Sometimes the most important moments are the ones we never planned for." As if summoned by their conversation, a small voice called from upstairs. "Daddy, the thunder woke me up." Marcus smiled apologetically. "Duty calls. I'll be right back." He climbed the narrow staircase to find Emma sitting up in bed, her elephant clutched tightly against her chest. Her dark hair, so much like Rebecca's, was tousled from sleep, and her eyes were wide with residual fear from the storm. "Hey, sweetheart. It's okay. Just a big storm, but we're safe inside." "I heard voices downstairs," Emma said. "Is someone here?" Marcus sat on the edge of her bed. "A lady needed help because of the storm. Her car broke down, and she's waiting until it's safe to leave." "She's very nice." Emma's curiosity immediately overtook her fear. "Is she okay? Does she need anything?" This was so typical of his daughter. Even at 8, Emma had an instinctive empathy that reminded Marcus daily of Rebecca's best qualities. "She's okay now. We're taking care of her, but I need you to go back to sleep, all right? School tomorrow. Can I meet her in the morning? We'll see. Now close your eyes." He tucked her in and kissed her forehead, then returned downstairs to find Sarah standing by the living room window, watching the storm. "She sounds sweet," Sarah said without turning around. "She is. Sometimes I think she's more mature than I am." Marcus joined her at the window. "How are you feeling? Any more contractions?" A few, but they're still irregular. False labor, maybe. The stress isn't helping. Sarah placed a hand on her belly. This little one has been active all evening. I think the storm has us both unsettled. When are you due? 3 weeks. First baby, so the doctor said it could be any time now or another month. She turned to face him. I know this is asking a lot, but would it be okay if I stayed until morning? I don't think it's safe to try walking back to my car in this weather. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Of course, you shouldn't even consider going back out there. Marcus pulled a blanket from the closet. The couch pulls out into a bed. It's not fancy, but it's comfortable. I can't thank you enough. You have no idea what this means to me. As Marcus helped her arrange the pull-out bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to Sarah's story. The way she spoke, the careful way she chose her words when talking about her family, even the quality of her clothes, despite their bedraggled state. Everything suggested a background very different from his own working-class life. But he'd learned not to pry. Everyone had their secrets, their private struggles. His own life had taught him that sometimes the most important thing you could do was simply show up for someone without asking questions they weren't ready to answer. Marcus! Sarah's voice was soft as he finished adjusting the pillows. Why did you help me? Really? You don't know anything about me. I could be anyone. He considered the question seriously. I guess because when someone's in trouble, you help. If you can. It's not more complicated than that. It is for most people. Maybe I'm not most people. He smiled. Besides, Emma would never forgive me if I turned away someone who needed help. She has very strong opinions about doing the right thing. Sarah smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. She gets that from her father. As Marcus turned off the lights and headed upstairs, he reflected on the strange turn his evening had taken. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, explaining Sarah's presence to Emma, figuring out how to get Sarah's car fixed, hoping the storm would pass without causing more problems. But tonight, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. The satisfaction of being exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was supposed to do. Sometimes life's unexpected moments weren't disasters to be weathered. Sometimes they were opportunities to remember who you wanted to be. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside his small house, 3 people found shelter from more than just the weather. And though none of them could know it yet, this night would prove to be the beginning of a story none of them could have imagined. Marcus woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. For a disoriented moment, he thought he was dreaming. It had been 3 years since he'd awakened to someone else cooking breakfast in his kitchen. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back. He glanced at his alarm clock. 6:15 a.m. Emma wouldn't be up for another hour. He pulled on jeans and a clean shirt, then padded downstairs to find Sarah standing at his stove, expertly flipping pancakes. She'd changed back into her own clothes, which had dried overnight, and her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail. Good morning, she said, turning with a smile. I hope you don't mind. I'm an early riser, and I wanted to do something to thank you for last night. Marcus surveyed the scene with amazement. His small kitchen had been transformed. The dishes from last night were clean and put away, the counters wiped spotless, and a proper breakfast was laid out on his worn wooden table. Pancakes, scrambled eggs, bacon, fresh coffee, and even a small bowl of cut fruit. You didn't have to do all this, he said, though he couldn't hide his appreciation. How are you feeling this morning? Much better. The contractions stopped completely around 3 a.m. I think it really was just stress and exhaustion. Sarah poured him a cup of coffee. Your kitchen is lovely, by the way, very organized. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. His kitchen was many things, but organized wasn't usually one of them. You must have worked some magic. It never looks this good when I'm done with it. I may have rearranged a few things. I hope that's okay." Before he could respond, Emma's voice drifted down from upstairs. "Daddy, something smells really good." "That would be our house guest," Marcus called back. "Come down and meet her." Emma appeared at the kitchen doorway moments later, still in her pajamas, but with her hair hastily brushed. She stopped short when she saw Sarah, suddenly shy. "Emma, this is Sarah Williams. Sarah, my daughter Emma." Sarah crouched down to Emma's level, her expression warm and genuine. "It's so nice to meet you, Emma. Your dad told me you're 8 years old. That's a great age." "Are you the lady who got stuck in the storm?" Emma asked, her natural curiosity overcoming her shyness. "I am. Your daddy was very kind to help me. He probably saved my life." Emma beamed with pride. "Daddy's good at helping people. He helped Mrs. Patterson next door when she fell and hurt her ankle." "I'm sure he is." Sarah straightened up. "Are you hungry? I made pancakes." Emma's eyes widened. "Real pancakes? Not the frozen kind?" Marcus felt a familiar pang of parental inadequacy. "Hey, frozen pancakes are perfectly nutritious." "They're fine, Daddy," Emma said diplomatically, "but these smell amazing." As they ate breakfast together, Marcus found himself studying Sarah more closely in the morning light. She moved through his kitchen with an ease that spoke of extensive cooking experience, yet her hands were soft, her nails perfectly manicured despite the previous night's ordeal. Everything about her suggested privilege, from her speech patterns to her unconscious posture. "What kind of work do you do?" he asked as Emma excused herself to get dressed for school. Sarah hesitated, her fork halfway to her mouth. "I'm between jobs right now. The pregnancy has made things complicated my career." "What field are you in?" "Business, corporate consulting mostly." The answer came quickly, but Marcus sensed she was being deliberately vague. "That must be challenging work." "It can be. Lots of travel, long hours, not very family-friendly." Sarah smiled ruefully. "Another reason my family wasn't thrilled about the pregnancy. They had expectations about my career trajectory." Emma bounded back downstairs, dressed in jeans and a bright yellow sweater. "Sarah, are you going to stay here while I'm at school?" "Oh, I don't want to impose any further," Sarah said quickly. "I should probably call a tow truck and deal with my car." "The storm probably knocked out a lot of the local service roads," Marcus said. "And honestly, after what you went through last night, you should take it easy today. No sense rushing around if you don't have to." "Please stay," Emma chimed in. "Daddy gets lonely when I'm at school. He tries to hide it, but I know." "Emma," Marcus warned, embarrassed. "It's true. You always look sad when you think I'm not watching." Sarah caught Marcus's eye over Emma's head, and something passed between them, an understanding of the weight of single parenthood, the isolation that comes with being solely responsible for another human being. "If you're sure it's not too much trouble," Sarah said softly. After Emma left for school, Marcus and Sarah settled on the front porch with fresh cups of coffee. The storm had passed, leaving the world looking washed clean and bright. Steam rose from the wet pavement in the morning sun. "She's remarkable," Sarah said, watching Emma's school bus disappear around the corner. "So confident and caring. You've done an incredible job with her." "Most days I feel like I'm just winging it," Marcus admitted. "Rebecca was the one with all the parenting instincts. I'm still learning. She mentioned that you help neighbors. That's not something you learn. That's who you are." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. He'd never been good at accepting compliments. "Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't." Sarah's voice was firm. "I've met a lot of people in my life, Marcus. Most of them wouldn't have opened their door to a stranger in the middle of the night, pregnant or not." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood come to life. Marcus noticed Sarah observing everything with keen interest. The modest houses, the chain-link fences, the working-class rhythms of his street. "This reminds me of where I grew up," she said unexpectedly. Marcus was surprised. "Really? I would have guessed somewhere more upscale." Sarah laughed, but there was sadness in it. "That came later. My father worked construction. My mother cleaned houses. We lived in a neighborhood a lot like this one in Denver. 3 kids, 1 bathroom, hand-me-down everything." "What changed?" "My dad invented something. A small tool that made certain construction jobs easier. He patented it, licensed it to a major company, and suddenly we had money. A lot of money." Sarah's expression grew distant. "It changed everything. We moved to a mansion in Cherry Hills Village, started going to country clubs, sending the kids to private schools. That sounds like a good thing. In some ways it was. Educational opportunities, financial security, all of that. But my parents, they became different people. Or maybe they just became the people they'd always wanted to be. They forgot where they came from, and they expected us kids to forget too." Marcus was beginning to understand. "And your pregnancy doesn't fit their new image. The baby's father was someone they considered beneath our family's station. A mechanic, a good man, but not someone who belonged in their social circle." Sarah's hand moved protectively to her belly. "When I told them I was pregnant, they offered to pay for an abortion. When I refused, they suggested I give the baby up for adoption to a suitable family. When I refused that too, they cut you off, essentially. They're hoping I'll come to my senses and realize I need them more than I need this baby." Her voice hardened. "They don't understand that this child is the most important thing that's ever happened to me." Marcus felt a surge of anger on her behalf. "Where's the father now?" "Dead." The word fell between them like a stone. "Car accident 2 months ago. He never even knew about the baby." "Sarah, I'm so sorry." She wiped her eyes quickly. "So now I'm completely on my own. My sister in Millbrook is the only family member who's still speaking to me, and she even thinks I should reconsider adoption. What do you want to do?" "Keep my baby, raise him or her myself, figure out how to be a good mother without all the money and advantages I grew up with." She looked at Marcus with admiration. "Like you did with Emma." "It's not easy," Marcus said honestly. "There are days when I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills, let alone give Emma everything she deserves. But you love her, and she knows. That's worth more than anything money can buy." Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it and frowned. "That's weird. Emma's school is asking parents to pick up students early, something about a water main break. "I can drive you," Sarah offered, "if we can get my car started." They walked the mile to where Sarah had abandoned her car the night before. It was a modest sedan, maybe 5 years old. Nice, but not the luxury vehicle Marcus might have expected given her family's wealth. "I bought this with my own money," Sarah explained, as if reading his thoughts. "I've been trying to live independently for the past year, proving to myself that I could make it on my own." The car started immediately. "Probably just got flooded last night," Marcus said. "These newer engines are pretty sensitive to water." As they drove to Emma's school, Marcus found himself thinking about Sarah's story. He understood the complexity of family expectations, though his own experience had been the opposite. Parents who'd never expected much from him, who'd seemed almost surprised when he'd managed to graduate high school and hold down steady jobs. Emma was waiting in the school office, chatting animatedly with the secretary about a book she was reading. Her face lit up when she saw them together. "Sarah, you got your car working." "Your dad figured out the problem," Sarah said. "He's pretty handy." On the drive home, Emma peppered Sarah with questions about the baby, about her plans, about everything she could think of. Sarah answered patiently, clearly enchanted by Emma's enthusiasm. "Will you teach the baby to cook like you cook?" Emma asked. "Those pancakes were the best I ever had." "I'd love to teach him or her to cook," Sarah said. "Cooking is one of my favorite things. Where did you learn?" My grandmother taught me before we moved to the big house. She said cooking was love made visible. Sarah's smile was wistful. I haven't thought about that in years. Back at the house, they spent the afternoon in comfortable domesticity. Sarah helped Emma with homework, while Marcus caught up on household chores. It felt natural, easy in a way that surprised him. He'd grown accustomed to the just him and Emma rhythm of their lives, but having Sarah there didn't feel intrusive. It felt like something had been missing that he hadn't even realized. Around 4 o'clock, Sarah's phone finally got a signal. She checked it and her face went pale. "Everything okay?" Marcus asked. 17 missed calls from my sister, and... She scrolled through her messages, her expression growing increasingly worried. "She says my parents have been calling her, asking if I've been in touch. Apparently they hired a private investigator to find me." "To find you? Why?" Sarah sank into a chair, suddenly looking very young and very scared. "Because the baby's father, David, his family is suing my parents. They found out about the pregnancy after he died, and they want custody. They claim I'm an unfit mother because of my family's rejection and my financial situation." Marcus felt cold. Can they do that? With enough money and the right lawyers? Maybe. My parents are probably trying to find me so they can convince me to work with them against David's family. They'd rather control the situation than lose completely. Emma, who had been quietly coloring at the kitchen table, looked up with concern. "Sarah, are you in trouble?" Sarah managed a smile for her. "Just some grown-up problems, sweetie. Nothing for you to worry about." But Marcus could see the fear in her eyes, and he felt a protective instinct kick in that surprised him with its intensity. This woman who had stumbled into their lives was facing a battle that could cost her everything she cared about. "What can I do to help?" he asked. Sarah looked at him with gratitude and something deeper, a trust that felt both precious and terrifying. "I don't know," she said softly, "but thank you for asking." Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Inside Marcus's small house, 3 people who had been strangers 24 hours earlier were becoming something else entirely. A family of choice, bound together by circumstance and growing affection. None of them knew that by morning, everything would change again. The morning of the 3rd day brought an unseasonable chill that seemed to seep through the walls of Marcus's house. Sarah had spent most of the night pacing the living room, her phone clutched in her hand, debating whether to call her sister back. The 17 missed calls had turned into 23 by dawn. Marcus found her standing at the kitchen window, staring out at the street with hollow eyes. She'd barely touched the toast he'd made for breakfast, and her usual composed demeanor had cracked, revealing the frightened young woman beneath. "I have to call Jennifer," Sarah said without turning around. "My sister, she's probably worried sick." "Do you want privacy?" Sarah shook her head. "I might need someone to talk me off the ledge after I hear what she has to say." She dialed her sister's number with trembling fingers. Jennifer answered on the first ring. "Sarah, thank God. Where are you? I've been calling for 2 days." Even from across the kitchen, Marcus could hear the panic in Jennifer's voice through the phone. "I'm safe. My car broke down in the storm and a kind family took me in." Sarah glanced at Marcus. "What's happening with Mom and Dad?" "They're going crazy. This private investigator they hired traced your last known location to somewhere near Riverside Heights, but then you just vanished. They think something happened to you." "Something did happen to me. I found people who actually care about whether I'm okay." There was a pause. "Sarah, you need to come home. This situation with David's family is getting out of hand. They've filed preliminary custody papers, and they're claiming you're emotionally unstable and financially incapable of raising the baby." Sarah's free hand moved protectively to her belly. "Based on what evidence?" "Based on the fact that you've been essentially homeless for 2 months, that you're estranged from your family, and that you have no visible means of support. Jennifer's voice was strained. Mom and Dad want to help, but you have to meet them halfway. Their version of help is taking over my life completely. Maybe that's not such a bad thing right now. You're 8 months pregnant, Sarah. This isn't the time to prove a point about independence. Marcus watched Sarah's face crumple. The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, with Jennifer alternately pleading and scolding, painting an increasingly dire picture of Sarah's legal situation. When Sarah finally hung up, she looked devastated. "They want me to come back today," she said. "Jennifer thinks if I don't show unity with the family, David's parents will convince a judge that I'm an unfit mother." "What do you think?" "I think I'm trapped." Sarah slumped into a chair. "If I go back, my parents will want to control every aspect of my pregnancy, my parenting, my life. They'll turn my child into another project to showcase their wealth and status. But if I don't go back, you might lose the baby entirely." "Exactly." Emma bounded into the kitchen, backpack slung over her shoulder, ready for school. She took one look at Sarah's tear-stained face and immediately went to her side. "What's wrong? Is the baby okay?" Sarah managed a watery smile. "The baby's fine, sweetheart. Just some complicated grown-up stuff." "Are you going to have to leave?" The innocent question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus realized that somewhere, in the past 3 days, his life had shifted fundamentally. The idea of Sarah leaving felt wrong in a way that had nothing to do with politeness or temporary charity. "I might have to," Sarah said gently. "But that doesn't mean I'll forget about you and your daddy. You've both been so kind to me." Emma's lower lip trembled. "But you belong here now. You make Daddy smile more than he has since Mommy died." The observation, delivered with 8-year-old directness, hit Marcus like a physical blow. He hadn't realized how obvious his growing attachment to Sarah had become, or how much Emma had noticed. "Emma, you're going to be late for school," he said, desperate to redirect the conversation. "Can Sarah drive me again, please?" Marcus looked at Sarah, who nodded despite her emotional state. "Of course." During the drive to school, Emma chatted about her upcoming class presentation on family traditions, seemingly oblivious to the tension between the adults. But as she got out of the car, she turned back with the serious expression she wore when she had something important to say. "Sarah, if those mean people try to take your baby, Daddy and I will help you fight them. That's what families do." After Emma disappeared into the school building, Sarah broke down completely. Marcus pulled over to the side of the road and held her while she sobbed, feeling helpless in the face of her anguish. "I can't go back to them," she whispered against his shoulder, "but I can't lose my baby either. I don't know what to do." "Maybe there's a third option," Marcus said carefully. "What if you had stability here? A support system, a safe place to raise the baby?" Sarah pulled back to look at him. "What do you mean?" Marcus felt his heart hammering. What he was about to suggest was crazy, impulsive, and potentially disastrous. But the thought of Sarah disappearing from their lives, of never seeing her smile, at Emma's jokes or humming while she cooked breakfast, felt unbearable. "Marry me!" The words hung between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. "Marcus, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. Think about it logically. You need stability and financial security to fight for custody. I can provide both. Emma adores you, and you're wonderful with her. We get along well, we have similar values, and—" He took a breath. "I care about what happens to you and your baby. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're kind, intelligent, and brave. I know you make incredible pancakes and that you sing softly to your baby when you think no one's listening. I know you've made my house feel like a home for the first time in 3 years." Sarah stared at him in amazement. "You're talking about a marriage of convenience. I'm talking about a partnership, a real one. We'd be a team, facing whatever comes together." Marcus reached for her hand. I'm not asking you to love me, Sarah. I'm asking you to let me help you build the life you want for your child. And what do you get out of it? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, searching for the right words. Honestly, a chance to stop feeling so alone. A chance to give Emma the mother figure she's been missing. And maybe a chance to see if what I'm feeling for you could grow into something real. Sarah's eyes filled with fresh tears. Marcus, this is insane. Is it more insane than losing your baby to people who didn't even know they had a grandchild until 2 months ago? They drove home in silence, both lost in thought. The enormity of what Marcus had suggested settled over them like a weight. By the time they reached the house, Sarah seemed to have regained some of her composure. "I need to think," she said. "This is the biggest decision of my life." "Of course, take all the time you need." But even as he said it, Marcus knew time was a luxury they didn't have. Sarah's phone had been buzzing with calls and texts all morning. Her family was closing in, and soon she'd have to make a choice about which path to take. They spent the afternoon in careful normalcy, Sarah reading while Marcus worked on fixing a leaky faucet, both of them pretending the morning's conversation hadn't happened. But the tension was palpable, a constant undercurrent to every mundane interaction. When Emma came home from school, she immediately sensed the change in atmosphere. "Did something bad happen?" she asked, looking between them with worried eyes. "Just thinking through some big decisions," Marcus said. "Nothing for you to worry about." But Emma wasn't satisfied with that answer. After dinner, while Sarah was in the bathroom, she cornered her father in the kitchen. "Daddy, are you going to marry Sarah?" Marcus nearly dropped the plate he was washing. "What makes you ask that?" "Because you look at her the way you used to look at Mommy in the old pictures. And because she needs us, and we need her." The wisdom in his 8-year-old daughter's words took his breath away. "Would that bother you, if I married someone who wasn't Mommy?" Emma considered this seriously. "Mommy's in heaven, right? And you said she wants us to be happy." "That's right. Then I think she'd want you to marry Sarah, especially since Sarah's baby needs a daddy and I want to be a big sister." Before Marcus could respond, Sarah appeared in the doorway. From her expression, it was clear she'd heard at least part of the conversation. "Emma," she said softly, "what would you think if I told you I might have to go away?" Emma's face crumpled. "I'd think that was the worst thing ever. You can't go away. We're a family now." "Sweetie, it's not that simple." "Yes, it is." Emma's voice rose with passion. "You love us, and we love you, and families stick together no matter what. That's what Mommy always said." Sarah knelt down to Emma's level, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, sweetheart, I do love you, both of you, more than I ever thought possible." "Then stay, please. We'll take care of you and the baby. Daddy's really good at taking care of people." Over Emma's head, Sarah's eyes met Marcus's. In that moment, he saw her decision crystallize. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Emma whooped with joy and threw her arms around Sarah's neck. Marcus felt his own eyes fill with tears as he watched his daughter embrace the woman who was about to become her stepmother. Later that evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Marcus and Sarah sat on the porch discussing the practical aspects of their arrangement. They would marry quickly, quietly, before Sarah's family could intervene. Marcus would adopt the baby after birth, providing additional legal protection. They would present themselves as a stable, loving family unit. "I want you to know," Sarah said as they finalized their plans, "this isn't just about legal strategy. I meant what I said earlier. I do love you both." "I love you too," Marcus replied, and was surprised to realize how true it was. Somewhere, in the past 3 days, what had started as compassion had deepened into something much more profound. They were about to seal their agreement with a kiss when headlights swept across the front of the house. A car was pulling into the driveway, and expensive sedan that looked completely out of place in Marcus's modest neighborhood. Sarah's face went white. Oh God, they found me. The car doors opened and two people emerged. Even in the dim porch light, Marcus could see the family resemblance. Sarah's parents had arrived, and from their posture and the speed of their approach, they were not here for a friendly reunion. The battle for Sarah's future was about to begin. Margaret Williams stepped out of the Mercedes with the bearing of a woman accustomed to commanding rooms. Even in the dim porch light, her designer clothing and perfectly styled silver hair were unmistakable markers of wealth and authority. Behind her, Richard Williams emerged more slowly, his expensive suit wrinkled from travel, but his jaw set with determination. Sarah instinctively moved closer to Marcus, her hand finding his arm. "How did they find me?" "Private investigator," her mother said crisply, approaching the porch steps. "Really, Sarah, did you think you could simply disappear? We've been worried sick, worried enough to hire a stranger to track me down instead of respecting my privacy." Margaret's eyes swept over Marcus dismissively before settling on her daughter. "Given your recent choices, your privacy is hardly our primary concern. You look thin. Are you eating properly?" "I'm fine, Mother. You're 8 months pregnant and living with strangers. You are not fine." Margaret's gaze shifted to Marcus with obvious distaste. "I assume you're the Good Samaritan who's been harboring our daughter." Marcus stepped forward, refusing to be intimidated. "Marcus Chen. And Sarah hasn't been harbored. She's been welcomed." Richard Williams spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the weight of boardroom authority. "Mr. Chen, we appreciate your kindness to our daughter during her episode, but it's time for her to come home where she belongs." "This isn't an episode," Sarah said, her voice stronger than Marcus had heard it since her parents' arrival. "This is my life, and these are my choices. Your choices have been questionable at best," Margaret snapped. "Getting involved with that mechanic, running away from family support, and now imposing on strangers who have nothing to offer you or your child." The casual cruelty of the comment hit Marcus like a slap. He felt Sarah tense beside him, but before either of them could respond, a small voice cut through the tension. "That's not true." Everyone turned to see Emma standing in the doorway, her hair tousled from sleep, but her expression fierce with 8-year-old indignation. "Emma, go back to bed," Marcus said gently. "No, Daddy. They're being mean to Sarah." Emma stepped onto the porch, looking directly at Margaret Williams. "My daddy has lots to offer. He takes care of people, and he makes them feel safe, and he loves them even when they're scared." Margaret stared at the child with surprise, clearly not having expected this interruption. "Young lady," Richard began in a patronizing tone, "this is an adult conversation." "About my family," Emma interrupted, a statement that made both Williams' parents blink in confusion. Sarah's hand moved to rest on Emma's shoulder. "Emma, these are my parents. They're here to talk about some important things." "Are they here to take you away?" The direct question hung in the air like a challenge. Margaret recovered first, her expression softening slightly as she looked at Emma. "We're here to take Sarah home where she can receive proper care for her pregnancy, but she's home," Emma said simply. "She's with us." Marcus felt his heart swell with pride at his daughter's fierce loyalty, but he also recognized the need to de-escalate the situation. "Emma, why don't you go inside and get Sarah a glass of water? She's had a long day." Emma hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave Sarah alone with her parents, but finally nodded and went inside. Richard seized the opportunity. "Mr. Chen, you seem like a decent man. Surely you can see that our daughter needs professional medical care, financial security, and family support. What can you possibly offer that compares to what we can provide?" "Love," Marcus said simply. Respect for her choices. A place where she's valued for who she is, not who you want her to be. Margaret laughed, but there was no humor in it. Love doesn't pay medical bills or provide college funds or ensure proper nutrition during pregnancy. Neither does money if it comes with conditions that destroy someone's sense of self. Sarah squeezed Marcus's arm gratefully, then stepped forward to face her parents directly. "I'm not coming home with you," she said quietly. "I've made my decision." "What decision?" Richard demanded. "To live in poverty? To raise your child in this—" He gestured dismissively at Marcus's modest house. "This place? To raise my child with people who love us unconditionally." Margaret's composure finally cracked. "Sarah, stop being naive. You think this man cares about you. He barely knows you. This is charity, not love, and charity has limits." "Actually," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart, "Sarah and I are getting married." The announcement hit like a thunderbolt. Margaret actually took a step backward, while Richard's face darkened with anger. "Married!" Margaret's voice was shrill. "You've known each other for what, 3 days?" "Long enough to know we want to build a life together," Sarah said, moving to stand beside Marcus. "This is insane," Richard exploded. "Sarah, you're not thinking clearly. The pregnancy hormones, the stress. You're not capable of making rational decisions right now. I'm perfectly capable of deciding who I want to spend my life with. Are you capable of deciding what's best for your child?" Margaret's voice turned calculating. "Because David's parents have made their position very clear. They want custody, and they have the resources to fight for it. What do you think a judge will say when they present evidence of your impulsive marriage to a man you barely know?" Marcus felt Sarah falter beside him, and his protective instincts flared. "What they'll see," he said firmly, "is a stable 2-parent household with a father who's successfully raised a child on his own and a mother who's making responsible choices for her family's future. A father who works 2 jobs to make ends meet and lives in a neighborhood where the median income is barely above the poverty line." Richard's tone was dismissive. "Please." Emma reappeared with the water, taking in the raised voices and tense postures with wide eyes. She moved immediately to Sarah's side, slipping her small hand into Sarah's. The gesture seemed to give Sarah strength. "This conversation is over. I'm not going anywhere with you." "Sarah, be reasonable," Margaret pleaded, her tone shifting to one of maternal concern. "We can work this out. Come home for the birth, let us help with the medical expenses and the legal issues. We can discuss your relationship after the baby arrives, so you can manipulate me when I'm most vulnerable." "No, thank you." Richard's patience finally snapped. "Fine. If you won't listen to reason, perhaps you'll listen to reality. David's parents have hired the best family law firm in Colorado. They're claiming you're an unfit mother based on your estrangement from your family and your lack of financial stability. When they add this reckless marriage to their evidence—" He let the threat hang in the air. Sarah's face went pale, but her voice remained steady. "Then I guess I'll need a good lawyer, too." "With what money?" Margaret demanded. "You've been living hand-to-mouth for months. How do you expect to fight a custody battle?" Marcus had heard enough. "She won't be fighting alone." "You?" Richard laughed harshly. "What can you possibly do against the legal resources they'll bring to bear?" "More than you might think." Marcus's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "I may not have your money, but I know something about fighting for what matters, and I know something about being underestimated." Margaret studied Marcus with new attention, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. "What exactly do you do for work, Mr. Chen?" "I'm a paramedic and an EMT instructor. I also do freelance consulting for emergency services. Hardly the financial foundation needed for a custody battle. Maybe not. But it's honest work that helps people, and it's taught me that the most important battles aren't always won by whoever has the most money." Sarah looked at Marcus with something approaching awe. In defending her, he'd revealed a strength and conviction she hadn't fully seen before. Emma, who had been listening to the adult conversation with growing confusion and distress, finally spoke up. "Why are you trying to take Sarah's baby away? That's not fair." Margaret knelt down to Emma's level, her expression gentling. "Sweetheart, we're not trying to take the baby away. We're trying to make sure the baby has the best possible life. The baby will have the best life with Sarah. She loves it so much. She talks to it all the time, and she makes special food so it will be healthy, and she's going to teach it to cook and read stories. But what about things like college funds and private schools and medical care?" Emma looked puzzled. "Daddy paid for all my medical stuff when I broke my arm, and I go to school every day, and Daddy reads me stories. But wouldn't you like nicer things? A bigger house, fancy clothes, expensive toys?" Emma considered this seriously. "I guess those things would be okay, but they wouldn't make me love Daddy more, and they wouldn't make Sarah love her baby more either." The simple wisdom of the child's response seemed to deflate some of Margaret's arguments. She stood slowly, looking between her daughter and the small family that had claimed her. "Sarah," she said quietly, "we're staying at the Marriott downtown tonight. Please think about what we've said. Think about what's truly best for your child." "I have thought about it every day for months." Sarah's voice was soft but unwavering. "And I know what's best. It's not money or status or your version of security. It's love and acceptance and the freedom to be myself." Richard opened his mouth to argue further, but Margaret placed a restraining hand on his arm. "We'll talk again tomorrow," she said, "after you've had time to think without outside influence." The clear implication that Marcus was manipulating Sarah hung in the air, but he didn't rise to the bait. "Good night, Mrs. Williams, Mr. Williams." As the expensive sedan pulled away, Sarah collapsed into one of the porch chairs, emotionally drained. "That went better than I expected," she said with dark humor. "Better?" Marcus stared at her. "They basically declared war. They could have, and called the police, claimed I was being held against my will, demanded an immediate welfare check." Sarah looked at him with exhaustion and gratitude. "Instead, they're giving me until tomorrow to change my mind. For my parents, that's practically generous." Emma climbed into Sarah's lap, careful of her belly. "Are you really going to marry Daddy?" Sarah smoothed Emma's hair. "Would that make you happy?" "The happiest. But are you sure you want to marry us? We're not rich like your parents." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Emma, sweetheart, you and your daddy are the richest people I've ever met. Rich in all the ways that actually matter." As they went inside to try to salvage what was left of the evening, none of them noticed the second car parked at the end of the street, a nondescript sedan with tinted windows, where the private investigator sat taking notes and photographs. The battle for Sarah's future had only just begun. The next morning arrived with deceptive calm. Marcus woke early to find Sarah already in the kitchen, but instead of her usual breakfast preparations, she was sitting at the table with papers spread before her and her laptop open. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, pouring himself coffee. "I've been researching family law all night." Sarah looked up with tired eyes but determined expression. "I need to understand exactly what we're up against." Marcus sat across from her, studying the documents. Legal briefs, custody case studies, Colorado, family court procedures. Sarah had been thorough. "What did you find?" "Good news and bad news." "Bad news first. David's parents, the Kowalskis, do have a legitimate claim for grandparents' rights, especially since David never knew about the baby. Colorado courts sometimes favor blood relatives if they can prove the parent is unfit." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "And the good news? Marriage to you would significantly strengthen my position. A stable two-parent household, especially with your background in emergency services and child-rearing experience, would be powerful evidence of my fitness as a mother." "But," Sarah's smile was grim. But my parents are right about one thing. The Kowalskis have hired Patterson, Burke and Associates, the most expensive family law firm in Denver. They're going to argue that my sudden marriage is evidence of instability, not stability. What do we need to counter that? A good lawyer. Of our own, for starters. And documentation of our relationship. Evidence that this isn't just a marriage of convenience. Marcus reached across the table to take her hand. It's not just convenient, though. You know that, right? Sarah's expression softened. I know. But a judge won't care about how we feel. They'll care about what we can prove. Emma's footsteps on the stairs interrupted them. She appeared in the kitchen wearing her school clothes, but with her hair still messy from sleep. Are you guys talking about the wedding? She asked excitedly. Can I be the flower girl? And can we have chocolate cake? Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances. They hadn't discussed the practical details of their marriage. When, where, how to. Make it seem genuine rather than desperate. We haven't planned the specifics yet, sweetheart, Sarah said gently. Well, it has to be soon, right? Because of the baby? Emma's 8-year-old logic was, as always, startlingly accurate. Very soon, Marcus confirmed. Probably this weekend. Emma's eyes went wide. This weekend? That's in 3 days. Sometimes, when people are sure about something, they don't want to wait, Sarah explained. Like when I knew I wanted to adopt Mr. Whiskers from the animal shelter. Exactly like that. As Marcus drove Emma to school, she peppered him with questions about wedding plans, guest lists, and whether Sarah would take their last name. Her excitement was infectious and genuine, which made Marcus feel both grateful and guilty. Emma deserved better than a marriage born from legal necessity, even if his feelings for Sarah were real. Daddy. Emma's voice turned serious as they pulled up to the school. Are you scared about marrying Sarah? A little, Marcus admitted. It's a big step. But you love her, right? Marcus thought about Sarah's quiet strength, her gentle way with Emma, the way she'd made their house feel complete. Yes, I do. Then it'll be okay. Love makes everything okay. Emma kissed his cheek and hopped out of the car with the confidence that only children possess. When Marcus returned home, he found Sarah on the phone with someone, her voice tense. I understand your position, Mr. Patterson, but I haven't made any final decisions. No, I won't be returning to my parents' home. Yes, I'm aware of the legal implications. She hung up, looking shaken. The Kowalski's lawyer, Marcus asked. He wanted to offer me a deal. If I agree to joint custody with supervised visitation for the first year, they'll drop the unfit mother claims. That's something, isn't it? Sarah shook her head. Joint custody means the baby would spend half their time with them. They'd have equal say in all major decisions. Education, medical care, where we live. It would be like having my parents. Control my life all over again, except worse, because I'd have no blood relationship to fall back on. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. So they want to take your child and let you visit, essentially. Patterson was very smooth about it, but that's what it amounts to. Sarah stood and began pacing. He also mentioned that they're prepared to challenge any marriage I enter into as fraudulent. On what grounds? Timeline, financial motivation, lack of established relationship history. Sarah's voice was bitter. They've been watching us, Marcus. They know exactly when I arrived here, and they'll argue that no legitimate relationship could develop that. Quickly, Marcus thought about the private investigator's car he'd glimpsed the night before. We need to be smarter than they are. How? Before Marcus could answer, his phone rang. The caller ID showed his fire station. Chen here. Marcus, it's Captain Rodriguez. I know you're off today, but we've got a situation. Multi-car accident on Highway 36, and we're short-staffed. Can you come in? Marcus looked at Sarah, torn between his professional duty and his need to stay with her during this crisis. Go, Sarah said immediately. People need you. I'll be fine. Are you sure? I'll pick up Emma from school and start making calls to lawyers. We both have work to do." An hour later, Marcus was suited up and responding to one of the worst accident scenes he'd encountered in years. A semi-truck had jackknifed in the rain, causing a chain reaction involving 6 vehicles. The organized chaos of emergency response took over, triaging injuries, coordinating with life flight, managing traffic. It was the kind of work that reminded Marcus why he'd chosen his profession. In moments like these, nothing mattered except skill, training, and the determination to save lives. The complex emotions of his personal situation faded into background noise as he focused on what he could control. He was working to stabilize a woman with internal injuries when his radio crackled with an update that made his blood run cold. All units be advised. Pregnant female, approximately 28 years old, in active labor, requesting transport from 2847 Maple Street. Maple Street was his street. 2847 was his address. Marcus's hands never stopped working on his patient, but his mind raced. Sarah wasn't due for 3 weeks. The stress of the legal situation, the confrontation with her parents, it could have triggered early labor. "Rodriguez," he called to his captain. "I need to be relieved. That pregnant woman, she's my fiancée." "Captain." Rodriguez looked up sharply. "You're what now?" "Long story, but I need to get to her. Go, Patterson can take over here." Marcus stripped off his gear and ran to his truck, calling Sarah's phone as he drove. It went straight to voicemail. He tried Emma's school next. "Riverside Elementary, this is Mrs. Johnson." "This is Marcus Chen, Emma's father." "Is she still there?" "No, Mr. Chen. A woman picked her up about an hour ago." "Sarah Williams," she said. "There was a family emergency." Marcus's heart hammered as he pressed harder on the accelerator. Sarah must have gone into labor while picking up Emma. The thought of his 8-year-old daughter dealing with that situation terrified him. He arrived at the hospital to find chaos in the emergency department. Sarah was nowhere to be seen, but Emma sat in the waiting area, looking small and scared despite the brave face she was trying to maintain. "Emma!" He swept her into his arms. "Are you okay? Where's Sarah?" They took her upstairs to have the baby. "She was really brave, Daddy, but I could tell she was scared. She kept asking for you." "How long ago?" "Maybe an hour. The ambulance people were really nice. They let me ride with Sarah and hold her hand." Marcus felt a surge of pride at his daughter's courage, followed immediately by concern for Sarah facing labor alone. "Mr. Chen." He turned to see a doctor in scrubs approaching. "I'm Dr. Martinez, obstetrics. Ms. Williams asked me to find you. She's in active labor, progressing quickly. The baby should be here within the next few hours. Is she okay?" "Is the baby okay?" "Both mother and baby are doing well considering the circumstances. However, Ms. Williams is quite distressed about some legal documents that were served while she was in labor." Marcus felt the world tilt. Legal documents? Someone from a law firm came to serve papers. Hospital security handled it, but Ms. Williams became very agitated. Her blood pressure spiked, which isn't good for either her or the baby. "I need to see her." "Of course. She's been asking for you constantly." As they headed toward the elevator, Emma tugging at his hand, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Chen, this is James Patterson, representing the Kowalski family. We've filed an emergency custody petition citing imminent risk to the child. A judge will be reviewing the case first thing Monday morning. You may want to secure legal representation immediately." The elevator doors closed, but Marcus felt like he was falling anyway. Sarah was about to give birth. They were facing a custody battle that could tear their new family apart. And somewhere in this hospital, lawyers were circling like vultures. But as the elevator climbed toward the maternity ward, Marcus felt his resolve crystallize. He'd spent his career saving lives in impossible situations. Now he had to save the life they were trying to build together. The doors opened to reveal Sarah's parents standing in the hallway, looking simultaneously worried and determined. Margaret Williams spotted Marcus immediately. "Mr. Chen, I suppose you've heard about the legal developments." "I've heard that someone served papers to a woman in active labor. That's despicable, even for lawyers." Richard stepped forward. "The Kowalskis are within their rights. And frankly, this situation proves their point about Sarah's instability. Going into premature labor during a crisis isn't exactly evidence of fitness for motherhood." Emma, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly stepped out from behind Marcus. "You're wrong," she said, her young voice clear and strong. "Sarah didn't go into labor because she's unstable. She went into labor because you scared her. That's not her fault. That's yours." The simple truth, delivered by a child, hung in the air like an accusation. Margaret Williams looked genuinely taken aback. "Emma," Marcus said gently, "why don't you sit in the waiting area while I talk to Sarah's parents?" "No, Daddy, I want to stay. Sarah's going to need all of us." As if summoned by their voices, a nurse appeared from one of the rooms. "Are you the father?" she asked Marcus. "I will be," he said firmly. "She's asking for you. And the little girl, too. She says you're family." As they followed the nurse down the hall, passing Sarah's parents without another word, Marcus realized that the next few hours would determine not just whether Sarah delivered safely, but whether they could protect the family they'd chosen to become. Behind them, Margaret Williams called out softly, "Sarah, we're here too, darling. We love you." But it was Marcus's hand that Sarah reached for when they entered the room, and Emma's voice saying, "We're here, Sarah. Everything's going to be okay," that finally made her smile through the pain. The battle for their future was about to enter its most critical phase. Sarah's grip on Marcus's hand was fierce as another contraction peaked. Her face was flushed with exertion, but her eyes remained focused and determined. Emma sat in a chair beside the bed, holding Sarah's other hand and whispering encouragement. "You're doing great," Dr. Martinez said, checking the monitors. "The baby's heart rate is strong, and you're almost fully dilated." "How much longer?" Sarah gasped between contractions. "Soon. Maybe another hour." Sarah nodded, then looked at Marcus with urgency. "The lawyers? Did you see the papers?" "Don't think about that now," Marcus said firmly. "Focus on bringing your baby into the world safely. Everything else can wait." "It can't wait, though. They timed this perfectly. They want to establish custody before we can get married, before we can present a unified front." Emma squeezed Sarah's. "And don't let the mean people make you scared. The baby needs you to be brave." Despite her pain, Sarah smiled at Emma's words. "You're right, sweetheart. This baby is lucky to have such a wise big sister already." The door opened, and Margaret Williams entered hesitantly. "Sarah, may I come in?" Sarah tensed, but Marcus saw something in her mother's face that was different from their previous encounters, a vulnerability that hadn't been there before. "Just for a minute," Sarah said. Margaret approached the bed cautiously, her usual commanding presence subdued. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm about to become a mother. I remember when you were born, 23 hours of labor, and you came, out screaming like you were angry at the world for making you wait so long." Despite everything, Sarah almost smiled. "I'd forgotten you told me that story. You were so beautiful, so perfect. I held you and promised I'd give you everything, every opportunity, every advantage." Margaret's voice grew thick with emotion. "I thought I was keeping that promise. You gave me everything except the freedom to choose my own path." Margaret was quiet for a moment, watching Sarah breathe through another contraction. "I've been watching you with this family," she said finally. "With Emma and Mr. Chen. The way they look at you, the way you respond to them. I haven't seen you that happy in years." Sarah stared at her mother in surprise. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe I was wrong about what you need." Margaret glanced at Marcus and Emma. Maybe what you need isn't what I thought it was." Before anyone could respond, Dr. Martinez returned with 2 nurses. "Time to push, Sarah. Your baby is ready to meet the world." The next 30 minutes were a blur of controlled chaos. Sarah pushed with everything she had while Marcus coached. Her breathing and Emma provided a steady stream of encouragement. Margaret stood in the corner, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter bring new life into the world. "I can see the head," Dr. Martinez announced. "One more big push, Sarah." Sarah gathered her strength and pushed with a primal sound that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. Suddenly, the room filled with the indignant cry of a newborn. "It's a girl!" Dr. Martinez held up a tiny, perfect baby, a beautiful, healthy girl. Sarah sobbed with relief and joy as the baby was placed on her chest. The little girl had a cap of dark hair and her mother's delicate features, but her lungs were clearly strong as she continued to voice her displeasure at being born. "She's perfect," Marcus whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He'd been present for Emma's birth years ago, but this felt different. This child would be his daughter too, if everything went according to plan. Emma leaned over to get a better look at the baby. "She's so little, and she's really mad about something." "She's probably hungry," Sarah said, already attempting to soothe the crying infant, "and confused about why the world is so bright and cold." As Sarah attempted her first feeding, Margaret approached the bed slowly. "What are you going to name her?" Sarah looked up at her mother, then at Marcus and Emma. "I was thinking, Grace. Grace Rebecca Chen." Marcus felt his breath catch. Rebecca had been his wife's name. Using it as the baby's middle name was Sarah's way of honoring the woman who had brought Emma into the world. "That's beautiful," he managed to say. Emma beamed. "Grace is the perfect name, and she'll have the same last name as us." Margaret noticed the significance of the name choice. "Chen, you're really going through with this marriage?" "We are," Sarah said firmly, though her voice was gentle. "This is my family now, Mom." For a moment Margaret looked like she might argue, but then she simply nodded. "Then I suppose I should get to know my son-in-law and granddaughter better." The unexpected capitulation stunned everyone in the room. Emma recovered first. "You're going to be Grace's grandma too? That's nice. She'll have lots of people to love her." As if responding to Emma's voice, baby Grace stopped crying and seemed to focus on the sound. Emma reached out tentatively to touch the baby's tiny hand. "She likes you," Sarah observed. "I think she knows you're her big sister." "Can I hold her after you're done feeding her?" "Of course." Dr. Martinez finished his examinations and paperwork, declaring both mother and baby healthy despite the early arrival. As the medical staff prepared to move Sarah to a regular room, Margaret pulled Marcus aside. "Mr. Chen." "Marcus, I owe you an apology." Marcus was too surprised to respond immediately. "I've spent the last 3 days thinking you were taking advantage of my daughter's vulnerable state. But watching you today, seeing how you care for her, and how Emma has embraced her, I was wrong." "Mrs. Williams, please, let me finish. I've made many mistakes as a mother, but my biggest one was assuming that what Sarah needed was what I thought she should want." Margaret glanced toward the bed, where Sarah was showing Emma how to properly support the baby's head. "She's happier with you than I've seen her in years. All of you seem complete together." Marcus felt some of his tension ease. "We are. I know the circumstances are unusual, but what we have is real. I believe you, which is why I need to tell you something about the custody situation." Marcus's guard went back up immediately. "What about it?" "The Kowalskis don't actually want to raise Grace themselves. They're in their 70s, and they've made it clear they expect my husband and me to take primary custody if they win." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. "So this whole thing is about your family getting control of the baby?" "Not my idea," Margaret said quickly. Richard thought we could pressure Sarah into coming home by supporting the Kowalskis' claim. He believed that once she faced the reality of losing Grace entirely, she'd accept our terms for keeping her. And now, Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Now I think my husband is a fool, and I'm going to tell him so. This baby belongs with her mother, and her mother belongs with the people who love her unconditionally. What does that mean for the custody hearing? It means the Kowalskis are about to lose their biggest allies. Before Marcus could fully process this information, Richard Williams appeared in the doorway. His expression was grim as he took in the scene, his wife talking quietly with Marcus while Sarah and Emma cooed over the new baby. "Margaret, we need to talk." "Yes, we do." Margaret's voice carried a steel Marcus hadn't heard before. "But first, come meet your granddaughter." Richard hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the emotional scene. But as he approached the bed and saw Grace for the first time, something in his face softened. "She's beautiful, Sarah." "Thank you, Dad." "She has your eyes and your stubborn chin." "I suspect, despite everything," Sarah laughed, "I hope she gets better judgment than her mother." "Your judgment brought you to people who love you," Richard said quietly. "That's not bad judgment at all." Emma looked up from where she was gently stroking Grace's tiny hand. "Are you going to stop trying to take her away from us?" The direct question, asked with 8-year-old innocence, hung in the air like a challenge. Richard looked around the room, at his daughter glowing with new motherhood, at Emma's protective stance, at Marcus's quiet strength, at his wife's tear-streaked, "Oh, Vase, yes," he said finally, "we're going to stop fighting you." Sarah's eyes filled with fresh tears. "Really? Really? Your mother is right. I've been a fool. I thought I knew what was best for you, but I was wrong." Richard's voice grew stronger. "You're a grown woman, and you've chosen your family. I may not understand it, but I can respect it." Dr. Martinez returned with discharge papers and feeding instructions. As the family prepared to leave the hospital, Marcus realized how much had changed in just a few hours. They'd entered as a family under siege, facing legal battles that could tear them apart. They were leaving as something much stronger, a family that had been tested and emerged whole. "Marcus," Margaret said, as they waited for the wheelchair. "Transport about the wedding. What about it? Would you mind terribly if Richard and I attended? I know it's presumptuous, but Grace should have her grandparents there for her parents' wedding." Marcus looked at Sarah, who nodded through her. "Exhaustion, we'd be honored to have you there." As they left the hospital, Grace sleeping peacefully in her carrier, Emma chattering excitedly about all the things she wanted to teach her new sister, and Sarah's parents walking alongside them instead of in opposition, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the sense that everything was falling into place, exactly as it should. But he also knew that the Kowalskis hadn't given up their fight, and Monday's hearing would still determine whether this fragile new happiness could survive the legal system's scrutiny. For tonight, though, they were taking home their daughter, and that was enough. The real test of their family's strength was still to come. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable sunshine that seemed to mock the gravity of what lay ahead. Marcus stood in his bedroom, adjusting his tie for the third time, watching Sarah feed Grace in the rocking chair by the window. 2 days had passed since they'd brought their daughter home, and the domestic tranquility felt almost surreal, given what awaited them at the courthouse. "You look handsome," Sarah said softly, not looking up from the baby. "Very official." "I look like I'm trying too hard," Marcus replied, abandoning the tie altogether. "You look like a man who's about to fight for his family." Emma appeared in the doorway, dressed in her best church dress, navy blue with small white flowers. She'd insisted on coming to the hearing, despite Marcus's attempts to convince her that school would be a better place to spend the morning. "Are you ready?" she asked solemnly. Marcus looked at his 8-year-old daughter, marveling at her composure. "Are you sure you want to be there, Em? It might be boring, and possibly upsetting. Grace is my sister now. I should be there when we tell the judge that she belongs with us." Sarah's eyes misted. "Emma, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Families stick together, especially when things are hard." An hour later, they sat in the waiting area outside Family Court Judge Helena Morrison's courtroom. The Kowalski family had arrived early and claimed seats on the opposite side of the room. An elderly couple flanked by their adult son and daughter, all dressed in expensive clothing that whispered of old money and established power. James Patterson checked his watch and adjusted his briefcase. Marcus had researched the lawyer extensively over the weekend. Patterson had a reputation for winning difficult custody cases, particularly those involving contested grandparents' rights. His track record was intimidating. "Ms. Williams?" Sarah looked up to see a woman in her 40s approaching with a confident stride. She had shoulder-length auburn hair and wore a simple but well-tailored suit. "I'm Catherine Walsh from Legal Aid. Your parents contacted our office and requested our best family law attorney. I understand you need representation." Sarah's surprise was evident. "My parents arranged this. They were quite insistent that you receive excellent legal counsel. They also provided a substantial contribution to our organization to ensure we could take your case." Marcus felt a surge of gratitude toward Margaret and Richard Williams. Their change of heart seemed to be complete and genuine. Catherine Walsh settled beside them, opening her own briefcase with practiced efficiency. "I've reviewed the preliminary filings, and I believe we have a strong case. The Kowalskis' claim is based primarily on their son's parental rights, but since he never acknowledged paternity and died before the birth, their legal standing is questionable." "What about their argument that Sarah is unfit?" Marcus asked. "Weak. The evidence they've presented, family estrangement, financial instability, rushed marriage, none of it rises to the level of unfitness that would justify removing a child from her biological mother." Catherine's expression grew more serious. However, Judge Morrison is known for her conservative approach to custody matters. She tends to favor traditional family structures and financial stability. Emma, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "What's a traditional family structure?" "Usually a mother and father who've been married for a long time, with steady jobs and a house," Catherine explained gently. "But we are a family. We love each other and take care of each other. Isn't that what matters?" "It should be, sweetheart. That's what we're here to prove." The courtroom doors opened and they were called inside. Judge Morrison was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her expression was carefully neutral as she reviewed the case files. "This is an unusual situation," she began. "We have grandparents seeking custody of a child whose father is deceased and whose mother they claim is unfit, while the mother has recently married and is seeking to establish her new husband as the legal father. Let's start with the petitioners." James Patterson stood and launched into his opening argument with polished precision. He painted a picture of Sarah as an unstable young woman who had abandoned her family, lived in poverty for months, and impulsively married a stranger to avoid losing her child. "Your Honor, the Kowalski family simply wants what's best for their son's child. They can provide financial security, educational opportunities, and a stable environment that Ms. Williams, despite her recent marriage, cannot match." As Patterson spoke, Marcus watched the judge's face for any sign of her reaction. Her expression remained impassive, but he noticed she occasionally glanced toward Emma, who sat between him and Sarah with perfect posture and serious attention. When it was Catherine Walsh's turn, she took a different approach entirely. "Your Honor, this case isn't about money or social status. It's about a mother's fundamental right to raise her child and a child's right to remain with her biological mother. unless there's clear evidence of unfitness, which there simply isn't. Catherine methodically dismantled the Kowalski's arguments, pointing out that David Kowalski had never acknowledged paternity, had never contributed to Sarah's pregnancy care, and had never expressed any desire to be a father. She presented evidence of Sarah's prenatal care, her responsible behavior during pregnancy, and her careful planning for the baby's arrival. Furthermore, Your Honor, Ms. Williams hasn't married a stranger. She's married to a man with an exemplary record of single parenthood, a stable career in emergency services, and a daughter who clearly loves and accepts both Ms. Williams and baby Grace as family. Judge Morrison looked directly at Emma. "Young lady, would you like to tell me about your family?" Emma stood up carefully, smoothing her dress. "Yes, ma'am. My name is Emma Chen, and I'm 8 years old. My mommy died when I was 5, so it's been just me and Daddy for a long time. That must have been difficult." It was, but Daddy always made sure I was okay. He works really hard to take care of me, and he's the best daddy in the world. "What about Sarah? How do you feel about her joining your family?" Emma's face lit up. "Sarah makes everything better. She makes Daddy smile again. And she teaches me things, and she makes really good pancakes. But mostly, she loves us. Not because she has to, but because she wants to." "And the baby?" "Grace is my sister. Not my half-sister or stepsister, just my sister. And she belongs with us because that's where her mommy is. And her mommy belongs with us because that's where love is." The courtroom was completely silent. Even James Patterson seemed momentarily disarmed by Emma's simple eloquence. Judge Morrison made some notes, then addressed Sarah directly. "Ms. Williams, why should I believe this marriage is genuine and not simply a legal strategy?" Sarah stood, Grace sleeping peacefully, in her arms. "Your Honor, I know the timing looks suspicious. But sometimes life doesn't follow the timeline we expect. I fell in love with Marcus Chen, not because I needed his protection, but because of who he is. A man who opens his door to strangers in storms, who raises his daughter to have compassion for others, who works 2 jobs without complaint to provide for his family." She paused, looking at Marcus with an expression of complete sincerity. "I could have gone back to my parents and their money. I could have accepted the Kowalskis' terms for supervised custody. I chose Marcus and Emma because they offered me something more valuable than financial security. They offered me genuine love and acceptance." Judge Morrison turned to Marcus. "Mr. Chen, you're willing to adopt this child and take on full legal and financial responsibility?" "Without hesitation, Your Honor. Grace is already my daughter in every way that matters. Making it legal is just paperwork. And you understand the financial obligations involved in raising 2 children on your current income." Marcus felt his heart pound, but his voice remained steady. "I've been supporting Emma on my own for 3 years. We may not have everything, but we have what we need, and now we have each other." The judge made more notes, then surprised everyone by addressing the Kowalskis directly. "Mr. and Mrs. Kowalski, I'm curious about your motivation here. Your son never acknowledged this pregnancy or expressed any desire to be a father. What makes you believe he would want you to pursue custody of his child?" The elderly couple exchanged glances. Mrs. Kowalski spoke first, her voice shaky with emotion. "David was our only son, Your Honor. This baby is all we have left of him. I understand your grief, but that doesn't give you superior rights to this child over her biological mother." James Patterson intervened quickly. "Your Honor, our clients simply want to ensure the child has the best possible opportunities." "Mr. Patterson," Judge Morrison interrupted, "I've heard your arguments about financial advantages, but I'm more interested in what's best for this specific child, not what might look best on paper." She turned back to the courtroom, her gaze sweeping over both families. "I'm going to take a 15-minute recess to review the documentation and consider my decision." As the judge left the courtroom, the families remained in tense silence. Marcus reached for Sarah's hand while Emma moved closer to them both. Across the aisle, the Kowalskis huddled with their lawyer, their expressions ranging from worried to defiant. Margaret and Richard Williams, who had been sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom, approached their daughter. "How are you holding up?" Margaret asked softly. "Scared," Sarah admitted, "but I'm hopeful." "You should be," Richard said firmly. "That judge has eyes. She can see what we see, a real family that chose each other." When Judge Morrison returned, the courtroom fell silent with anticipation. "I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony presented today. This is a complex case involving competing claims about what's best for baby Grace Williams Chen." Sarah held her breath. "However, the law is clear that biological parents have fundamental rights that can only be superseded in cases of clear unfitness or abandonment. I see no evidence of either here." The Kowalskis' faces fell. Ms. Williams has demonstrated consistent care for her child's welfare throughout her pregnancy and after birth. Her marriage to Mr. Chen, while recent, appears to be genuine and based on mutual affection and shared values. Mr. Chen has an exemplary record as a single parent and clearly has the capacity to provide a loving home for both children. Judge Morrison's gaze settled on Emma. Moreover, this court recognizes that families come in many forms, and the quality of love and care matters more than traditional structures or financial advantages. Marcus felt tears stinging his eyes. "Therefore, I'm denying the Kowalskis' petition for custody. Grace Williams Chen will remain with her mother and stepfather. However, I am granting the Kowalskis reasonable visitation rights, supervised visits twice a month to be arranged through the court." The courtroom erupted in quiet celebration from Sarah's side and disappointed murmurs from the Kowalskis' side. Emma threw her arms around both Marcus and Sarah, while Grace slept peacefully through it all. As they gathered their things to leave, Mrs. Kowalski approached Sarah hesitantly. I hope you'll let us be part of her life. She's all we have left of David." Sarah looked at the grieving woman with compassion. "She should know about her father and his family. We can work something out that's good for everyone." Outside the courthouse, the extended family gathered in the warm sunshine. Margaret Williams held Grace for the first time, tears streaming down her face. "She's perfect, Sarah, absolutely perfect." "She is," Emma announced proudly, "and now it's official. She's really our sister." Marcus pulled Sarah close, marveling at how much their lives had changed in just 1 week. They'd gone from strangers to family, weathered storms both literal and metaphorical, and emerged stronger than any of them could have imagined. "So," Sarah said, smiling up at him, "what do we do now?" "Now," Marcus said, kissing her forehead, "we go home and live happily ever after." Emma giggled. "Daddy, that's from fairy tales." "Maybe," Marcus replied, looking around at his wife, his daughters, and the family that had formed from love rather than blood. "But sometimes real life is better than fairy tales." As they walked toward their cars, Grace finally woke and looked around at the faces surrounding her with alert, curious eyes. She was seeing her family clearly for the first time, the people who had fought for her, chosen her, and would love her unconditionally for the rest of her life. It was, Marcus thought, a pretty good first impression of the world. 3 months after the courthouse victory, Marcus woke to the sound of Grace's contented babbling from the nursery. The morning light filtering through the curtains of their new bedroom still felt foreign. They'd moved to a larger house in the same neighborhood 2 weeks ago, thanks to an unexpected development in their lives. Sarah was already up, sitting in the rocking chair by the window with Grace, both of them bathed in golden sunlight. The baby had grown considerably, her dark hair now curling slightly at the ends, and her eyes had settled into the same warm brown as her mother's. "Good morning, beautiful girls," Marcus said, stretching as he sat up. "Someone's been awake since 5, Sarah said, but her tone was fond rather than tired. "I think she's going through a growth spurt." "Where's Emma?" "Still asleep, which is a miracle considering Grace's vocal exercises this morning." Marcus padded over to kiss Sarah's forehead and stroke Grace's cheek. The baby immediately reached for his finger with surprising strength, her face breaking into the gummy smile that never failed to melt his heart. "Any word from the publisher?" he asked. Sarah's face lit up. "Actually, yes. They want to move forward with the cookbook, full advance, national distribution, the works." Marcus felt a surge of pride. Sarah's cookbook project, a collection of family recipes and stories about finding home in unexpected places, had started as a therapeutic writing exercise. When she'd tentatively submitted it to publishers, neither of them had expected the enthusiastic response it received. "Sarah, that's incredible. It means I can contribute financially while still being home with Grace. And the best part is, they want Emma to contribute some kid-friendly recipes and illustrations. She'll be over the moon." As if summoned by their voices, Emma appeared in the doorway, her hair sticking up at odd angles and her pajamas wrinkled from sleep. "Is Grace awake?" "I heard her talking to her toes again." "She's very chatty this morning." Sarah confirmed. "Want to hold her while I start breakfast?" Emma nodded eagerly, settling into the chair with practiced ease. At 9 now, she'd become an expert at handling her baby sister, approaching the responsibility with the seriousness of someone much older. "Guess what, Gracie?" Emma whispered. "To the baby. Mama Sarah's book is going to be in real stores, and I get to help write it." Grace responded with an enthusiastic gurgle and grabbed a handful of Emma's hair. "She's excited too," Emma declared, gently untangling the tiny fingers. Downstairs, Marcus found Sarah humming while she prepared breakfast, a scene that still struck him as miraculous after months of domestic happiness. The kitchen smelled of coffee and cinnamon rolls, and sunlight streamed through windows that Sarah had decorated with cheerful yellow curtains. "I got a call from Captain Rodriguez yesterday," Marcus said, accepting his coffee gratefully. "He's recommending me for the training coordinator position." "Marcus, that's wonderful. More regular hours, better pay. And I'd be home for dinner every night. No more missing Emma's school plays or Grace's bedtime." Sarah moved into his arms, and he marveled again at how perfectly she fit against him. Their marriage had evolved from necessity to genuine partnership, to deep love, with a naturalness that surprised them both. Speaking of Emma's school, Sarah said, "I volunteered to help with the autumn festival. Apparently, having a published cookbook author as a volunteer parent is quite the coup for the PTA. You're not published yet." "Details," Sarah laughed. "Mrs. Henderson was so excited, she practically recruited me on the spot." Emma bounced into the kitchen, still carrying Grace. "Can we call Grandma Margaret and Grandpa Richard to tell them about the book?" The easy way Emma referred to Sarah's parents still amazed Marcus. The relationship between the Williams family and their new son-in-law and granddaughter had developed into something genuine and warm, built on mutual respect rather than obligation. "After breakfast," Sarah promised. "They're probably still asleep in Denver." "What about Grandma and Grandpa Kowalski? Can we tell them too?" The supervised visits with David's parents had gradually become more relaxed as trust developed on both sides. The elderly couple had initially been stiff and formal, clearly struggling with the reality of their son's death and their complicated relationship with his daughter. But Grace's irresistible charm and Emma's inclusive nature had slowly broken down their defenses. "We can call them this afternoon," Marcus said. "But remember, it's a work day for them." At 73, Stanley Kowalski still went to his accounting office 3 days a week, more for social interaction than financial necessity. His wife Dorothy had thrown herself into volunteer work at their church, channeling her grief into service to others. As they ate breakfast, Marcus reflected on how their extended family had grown and evolved. Margaret Williams had become an unexpected source of wisdom and support, offering practical advice about everything from baby care to career development. Richard had surprised everyone by developing a passion for building Emma elaborate dollhouses and playground equipment, his construction background finally finding a purely joyful outlet. The Kowalskis remained more reserved, but had begun to show genuine affection for both girls. Dorothy had recently started knitting tiny sweaters for Grace, while Stanley had opened a college savings account in the baby's name, a gesture that had moved Sarah to tears. "Daddy," Emma said, interrupting his thoughts, "can we have the big family dinner here this Sunday? I want to show everyone my new pictures of Grace." Emma had developed an impressive talent for photography, capturing candid moments of Grace's daily life with an artist's eye for composition and light. Her pictures adorned the refrigerator and several walls throughout the house. "If Sarah's up for hosting that many people," Marcus said. "I love our family dinners," Sarah said immediately. "Besides, I want to test some of the cookbook recipes on our favorite guinea pigs." The Sunday family gatherings had become a cherished tradition, bringing together the Williams parents, the Kowalskis, and occasionally Marcus's own parents, who had driven up from Phoenix to meet their new daughter-in-law and granddaughter. These events were chaotic, loud, and filled with the kind of multi-generational warmth that Marcus had never experienced growing up. After breakfast, Emma and Sarah settled in the living room with Grace for their morning routine of songs and story. In time, while Marcus prepared for his shift at the fire station, he was putting on his uniform when Sarah appeared in the bedroom doorway. "I forgot to tell you, Jennifer called yesterday. She's driving down from Millbrook this weekend with the kids." Marcus smiled. Sarah's sister had been their staunchest supporter from the beginning, and her 3 children adored their cousins Emma and Grace. The house is going to be chaos. The best kind of chaos. As Marcus was about to leave for work, his phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar Denver number, Mr. Chen. "This is Janet Foster from Channel 7 News. We're doing a feature story on unusual family formations and legal victories. We'd love to interview your family about your recent custody case and marriage." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. They deliberately kept a low profile since the hearing, wanting to establish their family life without outside scrutiny. "I appreciate the interest, but we're not looking for publicity. The story could help other families in similar situations. Your case has been cited in several recent custody decisions as precedent for prioritizing emotional bonds over traditional structures." Marcus looked toward the living room, where Sarah was reading to both girls, her voice animated as she brought the story to life. Emma was stretched out on the floor, occasionally making funny faces to make Grace laugh. "Let me discuss it with my wife and get back to you." After hanging up, Marcus found Sarah had overheard the conversation. "What do you think?" he asked. "Part of me wants to keep our private life private," Sarah said thoughtfully. "But if our story could help other families, it's up to you. This affects you more than anyone." Sarah was quiet for a moment, watching Grace attempt to grab the colorful pages of the book. "Let's do it, but only if they agree to focus on the legal precedent and family dynamics, not the sensational aspects." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. We have nothing to hide, and maybe other mothers facing similar battles need to know they have options." That evening, Marcus returned home to find the house filled with the sounds of domestic happiness. Grace's babbling, Emma's laughter, and Sarah's voice singing along to music playing from the kitchen. He stood in the doorway for a moment, still sometimes amazed by the fullness of the life they'd built together. "How was work?" Sarah asked, accepting his kiss while simultaneously stirring something on the stove. Good. We had a training drill with the new recruits. Made me think about the coordinator position. I really want to help train the next generation of first responders. You should take it. You're a natural teacher, and you've seen enough action to last several lifetimes. Emma appeared from the living room, Grace balanced on her hip with impressive skill. Daddy, Grace learned something new today. Watch. Emma set Grace down on her blanket and clapped her hands. Gracie, show Daddy. Grace, now 4 months old, pushed herself up on her arms and held the position for several seconds before collapsing with what sounded remarkably like laughter. She's doing baby push-ups, Marcus exclaimed, scooping Grace up and spinning her gently. You're going to be strong like your big sister. As they sat down to dinner, Marcus looked around the table at his family. Emma was carefully cutting her food into precise pieces, a habit she'd developed since becoming Grace's role model. Sarah was eating one-handed while bouncing Grace on her lap. The scene was ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. I've been thinking, Sarah said suddenly, about names. What about names? Well, Grace has your last name now, and Emma calls me Mama Sarah, but I've never officially adopted Emma. Would that be something you'd want? For me to legally become her mother, too? Emma's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. You want to adopt? Me? Only if you want me to. You already have a mother who loved you very much. I don't want to replace her memory. Emma considered this seriously. Would I still be Emma Chen? Of course. And you'd still be my Mama Sarah, not my mom. Whatever you're comfortable with. Emma nodded decisively. I want you to adopt me. Then we'd all be a real family on paper, too. We're already a real family, Marcus said softly. I know, but this way nobody can ever say we're not. Later that evening, after both girls were asleep, Marcus and Sarah sat on their new back porch, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. Do you ever miss your old life? Marcus asked. Corporate consulting, travel, all of that? Sarah was quiet for a moment. I miss the intellectual challenge sometimes. But I don't miss the emptiness. I spent years climbing a ladder that led nowhere I actually wanted to be. And now I wake up every morning knowing exactly why I'm here and what matters most. She leaned against his shoulder. Besides, writing this cookbook has been more creatively fulfilling than anything I did in the corporate world. What's next? After the book is published? I've been thinking about that. Maybe a blog about unconventional families or consulting for other mothers facing custody battles. Turn our experience into something that helps others. Marcus kissed the top of her head. You'd be good at that. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of their neighborhood, dogs barking in the distance, teenagers laughing as they walked past, the occasional car driving slowly down their quiet street. Marcus, do you remember what you said that first night? About how the most important moments are the ones we never planned for. I remember. I keep thinking about that storm. If it had been any other night, if your neighbor had been home, if I'd had cell service. So many tiny things that could have been different. But they weren't different. No, they weren't. And now we have this whole beautiful life that exists because of a thunderstorm and a broken-down car. Marcus pulled her closer. Maybe some things are just meant to be. Maybe they are. As they prepared for bed, Marcus checked on both girls as he did every night. Emma was curled up with her favorite stuffed animal, her face peaceful in sleep. Grace was on her back in her crib, her tiny fists thrown up beside her head in complete surrender to dreams. Standing there in the quiet nursery, Marcus marveled again at the family they'd become. A year ago, he'd been a lonely single father, doing his best but feeling incomplete. Now he had a wife who challenged and supported him, 2 daughters who filled his life with purpose and joy, and extended family relationships that enriched all their lives. The storm that had brought Sarah to his door had indeed changed everything. But the real transformation hadn't been in that single night of crisis. It had been in the daily choice, made over and over again, to build something lasting and beautiful from the unexpected gift they'd been given. As he turned off the nursery light and headed toward the bedroom he now shared with Sarah, Marcus whispered a quiet thank you to whatever forces had conspired to bring them together. Some storms, he'd learned, don't destroy. They deliver exactly what you never knew you needed. 1 year later, Marcus stood in the doorway of their kitchen, watching Sarah teach 18-month-old Grace how to crack eggs into a mixing bowl. Grace's chubby fingers gripped the shell with determination, though most of the egg ended up on the counter rather than in the bowl. "Gentle baby girl," Sarah laughed, guiding Grace's hands. "Like this." Emma, now 10 and considerably taller, was documenting the cooking lesson with her camera. "This is perfect for the second cookbook," she announced. "Cooking with toddlers, a recipe for disaster." "Very funny," Sarah said, wiping egg from Grace's hair, though not entirely inaccurate. The morning sun streamed through their kitchen windows, illuminating the cookbook that sat prominently on the counter. Finding Home, Recipes for Unexpected Families by Sarah Williams Chen. The book had exceeded everyone's expectations, spending 6 weeks on bestseller lists and earning Sarah invitations to cooking shows and family magazines. "Channel 7 called again," Marcus said, holding up his phone. "They want to do a follow-up story for the anniversary of the custody case." "What did you tell them? That we're too busy living our life to keep talking about it on television?" Sarah smiled. "Good answer." Grace babbled something that sounded remarkably like "da-da," while pointing at Marcus with an egg-covered finger. At 18 months, she was walking confidently, had a vocabulary of about 20 words, and possessed an infectious giggle that could brighten anyone's day. "Yes, that's Daddy," Sarah confirmed. "And you're making a mess, little chef." Emma lowered her camera. Aunt Jennifer texted, "She's bringing the kids for Grace's birthday party next weekend, and Grandma Margaret wants to know if she should bring the fancy decorations or the regular ones." "Regular ones," Sarah and Marcus said simultaneously, then laughed. Margaret Williams had developed a tendency toward elaborate celebrations that sometimes overwhelmed the children. Her heart was in the right place, but her execution could be exhausting. "What about Grandma and Grandpa Kowalski?" Emma asked. "They're coming Saturday afternoon," Marcus replied. "Dorothy's bringing her famous chocolate cake." The relationship with David's parents had evolved into something warm and genuine. Stanley had become Grace's devoted grandfather, complete with silly voices and pocket full of treats. Dorothy had appointed herself the keeper of David's memory, sharing stories and photos, so Grace would know about her biological father when she was older. "I still can't believe how everything worked out," Sarah said, cleaning Grace's hands with a damp cloth. "You mean Grace having 4 grandparents who spoil her rotten?" Emma grinned. "I mean all of it. The book, the family, this house." Sarah gestured around their renovated kitchen. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life." "It's your life," Marcus said firmly. "You chose it. You built it. You earned it." Grace wiggled down from her high chair and toddled over to Marcus, arms raised in the universal demand to be picked up. He scooped her up, marveling at how much she'd grown. She had Sarah's dark eyes but Emma's mischievous smile, and she'd developed a fierce independence that kept them all on their toes. "Daddy, work?" Grace asked, patting his fire department t-shirt. "Not today, baby. Today, Daddy stays home and helps with the big mess you and Mama made." Emma giggled. "She's definitely related to us. Look at this kitchen." The counter was covered with flour, eggshells, and what appeared to be half the contents of their spice rack. Sarah's cookbook photo shoots had taught her that cooking with children was equal parts joy and chaos. Speaking of work, Sarah said, I got another offer yesterday. Food Network wants me to host a show about family cooking. Marcus paused in wiping Grace's face. Really? That's huge, Sarah. It would mean traveling to Los Angeles once a month for filming. I haven't decided if I want to do it. Why wouldn't you? Emma asked. You'd be on TV. That's so cool, because it would mean time away from you guys. And Grace is still so little. Marcus set Grace down and pulled Sarah into his arms. What do you want to do? I want to do everything and nothing. I want the career opportunities, but I also want to be here for every milestone, every scraped knee, every bedtime story. So we figure out how to do both, Marcus said simply. That's what families do. We support each other's dreams. Grace had wandered over to the sliding door that led to their backyard, pressing her face against the glass and babbling at the birds in their new garden. Emma had taught her to identify different species, and Grace would point excitedly whenever she spotted a cardinal or blue jay. "Bird, bird," Grace announced, slapping the glass with both hands. "She's right," Emma said, joining her sister at the door. "There's a whole family of robins building a nest in the oak tree." Sarah moved to stand, behind both girls, one hand on Emma's shoulder and the other smoothing Grace's dark curls. "Just like we built our nest here." Marcus watched his three girls and felt the familiar surge of gratitude that had become his daily companion. The scared, desperate woman who'd knocked on his door during a storm had transformed into a confident wife and mother. The lonely man who'd answered that door had rediscovered joy and purpose he'd thought were lost forever. Emma had gained not just a stepmother and sister, but a sense of belonging to something larger than their small, grief-stricken household. And Grace had been born into a web of love so strong that she'd never question her place in the world. "I have an idea about the TV show," Marcus said suddenly. Sarah turned to look at him. "What kind of idea?" "What if they filmed some episodes here? Show real family cooking in a real family kitchen with real messes and real kids. It would be more authentic than a studio, and you wouldn't have to travel." Sarah's eyes lit up. "That's actually brilliant. The whole premise of my cookbook is about finding home. What better way to showcase that than cooking in our actual home?" "I be on TV too?" Emma asked hopefully. "If you want to be," Sarah said. "You're already my co-photographer and recipe tester. Might as well add TV personality to your resume." Grace toddled back over to them, reaching up her arms to be included in the family huddle. Marcus lifted her up, and she immediately grabbed Sarah's face with both hands, planting a wet, enthusiastic kiss on her cheek. "Love, Mama," Grace said. Clearly, Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Grace had been saying Mama for months, but this was the first time she'd combined it with love. "I love you too, sweet girl. So much." Emma wrapped her arms around all of them. Group hug. They stood there in their messy kitchen, covered in flour and egg, holding each other close while sunshine streamed through the windows and birds sang in their garden. It was an ordinary moment, and an extraordinary one at the same time. Later that evening, after Grace was asleep and Emma was reading in her room, Marcus and Sarah sat in their backyard swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Do you ever think about that storm?" Sarah asked softly. "Every day," Marcus replied. "It brought me everything I didn't know I was missing. I was so scared that night, not just of the storm, but of everything, being alone, having the baby, losing custody, facing my parents." Sarah leaned against his shoulder. "I had no idea I was walking toward home." Maybe that's how the best things happen, when you're not looking for them. Sarah was quiet for a moment, watching a firefly blink among the roses they'd planted together. "Marcus, I want to do the TV show, here, with all of us. I want to show the world what real families look like, messy and loud and imperfect, and full of love." "Exactly." As darkness settled over their neighborhood, they could hear the sounds of other families, children playing in nearby yards, parents calling them in for baths and bedtime stories, dogs barking, screen doors closing. The ordinary symphony of suburban life that had become the soundtrack to their happiness. "We should go in," Sarah said eventually. "Emma has school tomorrow and Grace will be up early." 5 more minutes, Marcus said, tightening his arms around her. "I want to remember this." "Remember what?" "This moment, this feeling. The way the air smells like honeysuckle and how content you sound, and the fact that our daughters are safe in their beds upstairs." Sarah tilted her head to look at him. "You don't have to memorize it. We'll have thousands more moments like this." "I hope so. I know so." They sat in peaceful silence, holding each other as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Somewhere, in the distance, thunder rumbled, a summer storm approaching, bringing the promise of rain and renewal. But this time, Marcus wasn't worried about storms. Their house was solid, their family was secure, and they'd learned that sometimes the most beautiful things in life arrive when you're brave enough to open your door to the unexpected. The storm that had changed everything was just the beginning of their story. The real magic had happened in all the ordinary days since, in morning coffee and bedtime stories, in scraped knees and proud moments, in quiet conversations and shared laughter. As they finally headed inside, Sarah paused at the threshold and looked back at the swing where they'd been sitting. "What is it?" Marcus asked. "I just realized something. That first night, when I knocked on your door, I thought I was asking for shelter from the storm. You were." Sarah smiled. "No, I wasn't. I was asking to come home, I just didn't know it yet." Marcus kissed her forehead as they stepped inside together, closing the door gently behind them. Outside, the storm was building, but inside, they were exactly where they belonged, surrounded by love, purpose, and the sweet chaos of the family they'd chosen to become. Some storms destroy, but others deliver exactly what you need, exactly when you need it most. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they bring you home. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.